Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudirayet Nashtaprayeshu Vabhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttamashloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishkiti Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kada Mahyam Dadati Svapadantikam Namam Vishnu Padaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Nitinamine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभो नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे Hare Krishna, reading from Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. By His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. We are reading from Canto 3 and we are going to begin chapter 29, Explanation of Devotional Service by Lord Kapila. So again, a very beautiful chapter. So the chapter that we concluded, 27 and 28, there we discussed the four specific questions of Mother Devahūti. And in the chapter 28, Kapila Muni is answering the limbs of Ashtanga Yoga, then how to do dharana of the Lord, dhyana, and effect of dharana and dhyana on the mind of the thought process of a yogi. So now we come to chapter 29. It has 45 verses and it is divided into 5 sections. So section 1 is Devahūti's further queries, text 1 to 6. So Devahūti is further going to inquire. So this is the beauty of our literatures. Our literatures go with question answer format, discussion format. This is not the case with the Abrahamic religions. They come as a commandments. There is a difference between discussion and commandment. Commandment means there is, there is no version of whether you can do it, not do it. Is there any question? Nothing. It has to be followed. But Bhagavad Gita is not a book of commandment, or Bhagavatam is not a book of commandment. These are a book of discussions where there is due question answers, right? So now, so text 1 to 6, Devahūti's further questions. 7 to 20, Kapila describes the classes of bhakti yoga. Bhakti in the different modes of material nature. So bhakti is not in the modes, it is the practitioner of the bhakti who is in the modes, and that's why bhakti performed by such a person may appear in the modes of material nature. Text 21 to 27, offenses in bhakti and various solutions. Then 28 to 34, we will discuss gradations of the jivas, and 35 to 45, we will be discussing basically nature of time element, nature of nature of time as the element. So we will begin with the first section, that is the section of Devahūti's further queries. Also, one has to understand here is that this chapter 29 is the answer to Devahūti's fifth question, where she's asking, what is the path of bhakti? Explain me the path of bhakti in detail. Right. And later, the sixth question also is being answered here. That is characteristics of the time. These are the original questions by Mother Devahūti. Just give me a minute. Yeah. So, text 1. So, chapter 29, explanation of devotional service by Lord Kapila. Text 1. Devahūti ruvacha लक्षणं महदादीनां प्रकृते पुरुषस्य च स्वरूपं लक्ष्यते मीशां येन तत्पारमार्थिकं यथा सांख्येषु कथितं यन्मूलं यत् प्रचक्षते भक्तियोगस्य मे मार्गं ब्रूहि विस्तरशः प्रभो. Translation.
Devahūti inquired, "My dear Lord, you have already very scientifically described the symptoms of the total material nature and the characteristics of the spirit according to the Sankhya system of philosophy. Now I shall request you to explain the path of devotional service, which is the ultimate end of all philosophical systems." Purport. In this 29th chapter, the glories of devotional service are elaborately explained, and the influence of time on the conditioned soul is also described. The purpose of elaborately describing the influence of time is to detach the conditioned soul from his material activities, which are considered to be simply a waste of time. In the previous chapter, material nature, the spirit, and the Supreme Lord or Supersoul are analytically studied. And in this chapter, the principles of bhakti yoga or devotional service, the execution of activities in the eternal relationship between the living entities and the personality of Godhead are explained. Bhakti yoga, devotional service, is the basic principle of all systems of philosophy. All philosophy which does not aim for devotional service to the Lord is considered merely mental speculation. But of course, bhakti yoga with no philosophical basis is more or less sentimental. There are two classes of men. Some consider themselves intellectually advanced and simply speculate and meditate, and others are sentimental and have no philosophical basis for their propositions. Neither of these can achieve the highest goal of life, or if they do it, it will take them many, many years. Vedic literature therefore suggests that there are three elements, namely the Supreme Lord, the living entity, and their eternal relationship. And the goal of life is to follow the principles of bhakti or devotional service and ultimately attain to the planet of the Supreme Lord in full devotion and love as an eternal servitor of the Lord. Sankhya philosophy is the analytical study of all existence. One has to understand everything by examining its nature and characteristics. This is called acquirement of knowledge. But one should not simply acquire knowledge without reaching the goal of life or the basic principle for acquiring knowledge, bhakti. If we give up bhakti yoga and simply busy ourselves in the analytical study of the nature of things as they are, then the result will be practically nil. It is stated in the Bhagavatam that such engagement is something like husking a paddy. There is no use beating the husk if the grain has already been removed. By the scientific study of material nature, the living entity, and the supersoul, one has to understand the basic principle of devotional service to the Lord. Hare Krishna.
So, this is the opening verse of the 29th chapter. And devotee is inquiring that, my dear Lord, Prabhu, you have already very scientifically described symptoms of the total material nature in the previous discussions. Then the characteristics of the spirit according to the Sankhya philosophy. Now I request you to please explain the path of devotional service, which is ultimate end of all philosophical systems. Right. So yatha sankheshu kathitam and tat paramarthikam. Now this path is the ultimate end, and therefore bhakti is called as Vedanta. Vedanta means where the Vedas conclude, there bhakti begins. Right. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada says this chapter specifically covers glories of devotional service and influence of time on the living entity. Now, why the influence of time? Because it is to detach the conditioned soul from material activities, which are considered to be simply a waste of time. So, this is something very amazing that, we think ourselves to be so important. And then, we think And then, and because of that, one is getting more and more entangled in the material complexities. Again, this is not to say that we not do our responsibilities very well. We do our responsibilities very, very well, but in the due course of time, progressively and gradually, we need to detach ourselves from the material activities and put ourselves in the spiritual activities, right? And therefore, this influence of time is very important, because so many people have come and gone, right? So many people are there right now who are far bigger than us, and we have no idea of, uh, even we have not heard of their names or know their activities. So this is the reason about discussing about effect of time. And then there is, so Prabhupada says bhakti yoga is the basis of all the principles of philosophy. Broadly, the spiritual path is on two aspects. One is the sentiments of the relationship, and another is the analytical study. And Prabhupada's that golden statement that philosophy without religion is mental speculation, and religion is practice of the activities. Religion without philosophy is only sentimentalism. So Prabhupada says both the things are very important: the religious practices and the philosophical basis. So, and the devotee has to go both hand in hand to progress quickly. And there are three elements, three personalities. There is Bhagavan, there is Bhakta, and interaction between Bhagavan and Bhakta, that is Bhakti. And this also will be discussed in this particular chapter. So, Sankhya philosophy is analytical study of the universe, but it is embedded, it is implied that when we will do the analytical study, means automatically one will act on that study also. So people sometimes say that knowledge is power, but knowledge is not power. Action based on that knowledge is power. So, sometimes otherwise we get into that unlimited learning loop. I want to learn, and people just become lifelong learner without practicing it. So, there is a golden triangle, and golden triangle is that is called as LDT. LDT means learn, do, teach. Okay, we should learn quickly something, we should do quickly, and we should teach also something. We don't have to become some purified Mahatma with some aura behind us to teach people. Whatever we know, we should teach it. Whatever we know, we should try to, little bit we should learn, we should put that in practice, and we should teach it also. So this is called as a golden triangle, right? LDT. So here, Prabhupada says, therefore, practice of devotional service is very important. If one gives up bhakti yoga and simply goes on studying analytical matter, then that is Bhagavad Bhakti Nasya, right? Jati Shastri Japastapaha Apranasya Eva Dehasya Mandanam Lokaranjanam. It is only for the Lokaranjan that study will remain. Otherwise, it is of no use. It is like husking a paddy. So here the action is highly recommended, and that action is the basic principle of devotional service to the Supreme Lord. Text 3. Virago yena purusho bhagavan sarvato bhavet achakshva jivalokasya vividhamama samsmriti. Translation.
Translation. Devahūti continued, My dear Lord, please also describe in detail, both for me and for people in general, the continual process of birth and death, for by hearing of such calamities, we may become detached from the activities of this material world. Purport. In this verse, the word samsruti is very important. Shreya Shriti means the prosperous path of advancement towards the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And samsruti means the continued journey on the path of birth and death towards the darkest region of material existence. People who have no knowledge of this material world, God, and their actual intimate relationship with Him are actually going to the darkest region of material existence in the name of progress in the material advancement of civilization. To enter the darkest region of material existence means to enter into a species of life other than the human species. Ignorant men do not know that after this life they are completely under the grip of material nature and will be offered a life which may not be very congenial. How a living entity gets different kinds of bodies will be explained in the next chapter. This continual change of bodies in birth and death is also called samsara. Devahūti requests her glorious son, Kapila Muni, to explain about this continued journey to impress upon the conditioned souls that they are undergoing a path of degradation by not understanding the path of bhakti-yoga, devotional service. Hare Krishna.
So now Devotee says that, my dear son, please also explain to me, describe in detail for both me and people in general, the continued process of birth and death, samsmriti. For hearing such calamities, it's very important to hear such calamities. What will happen otherwise? We may become detached from the activities of this material world. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada explains that the word samsmriti, so there are two words, shreya smriti and samsmriti. So one is apavarga and another is pavarga. Apavarga means the path towards the Supreme Lord. Pavarga means the path which is continuous in material entanglements. Pa, fa, ba, bha, ma. Pa is parishrama. Fa is fena. Fena means foaming at the mouth. Pa, fa, ba is bandhan, getting entangled in the actions and reactions. Bha is a bhaya. And finally, ma is mrityu. And this is the path, samsara chakram parivartayeti. This continuously, the living entity is in the grip of this material nature. Prabhupada says, people think progress means advancement of the material science. Or materially I'm advancing, that is the progress, material advancement of civilization. And while conducting such advancement, one is doing horrific karmas, ugra karmas, and they are unaware that after this life, they will be under the tight grip of material nature and they will be awarded the next bodies, and before awarding the next bodies, the punishment within the hells accordingly. So people, they conveniently close their eyes, just like, sometimes we say the cat which is drinking milk, the cat will close the eyes and drink milk thinking that nobody is watching me. Similarly, a living entity may conveniently close his her eyes thinking that, oh, there is no God, no karma, this is the only life. And people have soothing philosophy also. Once you become human, you always remain human, if at all they believe in punarjanma. Otherwise, they say, oh, this is the only life you have. Bas, iske baad, all zero, just enjoy now only. This Charvak philosophy. Forgetting that they are under the tight grip of material nature. And based on activities in this, whether we believe or not, right? The law is going to act. Somebody says, I don't believe the law of gravity, and jumps from the 10th floor. By his not believing, the law is not going to act. Right? The law will act irrespective of one believes or not. One is a Hindu or Christian or Jew or whatever it is. Law is going to act because it's law. It's law of the nature. Law is going to act. And people do not understand that and thus risk their future. And what is the greatest risk? Prabhupada says the greatest risk is attaining the lower forms of life. Andha tamo prameshanti. So that ye asambhutim upasate. So, this is Ishopanishad. Going to the darkest region means attaining the lower forms. And one day Prabhupada was giving a lecture, and once Prabhupada said, and if you do not understand the importance of human form of life, you will be degraded to cats and dogs. And one hippie raised his hand and Prabhupada said, Swamiji, what is the problem if I become a dog? And Prabhupada told him, you have my full blessings that next life you will become a dog. So this is not about demeaning cats or a dog. The point is, it is about understanding the importance of human form of life. Cat and dog, however lovely they may be, they cannot inquire about the Supreme Lord unless they are born in some devotee's house, right? So the prerogative of Athato Brahma Jigyasa is only there in the human form of life. And the greatest curse or the greatest degradation is degrading oneself to the lower species, where there is, one just is caught in the cycle of Janma Mrityu, that, and then slowly one again will evolve to the human form. Again, in the human form, he will, if he's fortunate enough, will come across, and it's a very, very dangerous cycle. Text 4. कालस्य ईश्वररूपस्य परेषां च परस्यते स्वरूपं बत कुर्वन्ति यद्धेतो कुशलं जनाः. Translation.
Translation. Please also describe eternal time, which is a representation of your form and by whose influence people in general engage in the performance of pious activities. Purport. However ignorant one may be regarding the path of good fortune and path down to the darkest region of ignorance, everyone is aware of influence of eternal time, which devours all the effects of our material activities. The body is born at certain time and immediately the influence of time acts upon it. From the date of the birth of the body, the influence of death is also active. The advancement of age entails the influence of time on the body. If a man is 30 or 50 years old, then the influence of time has already devoured 30 or 50 years of the duration of his life. Everyone is conscious of the last stage of life, when he will meet the cruel hands of death. But some consider their age and circumstances concern themselves with the influence of time and thus engage in pious activities so that in future they will not be put into a low family or an animal species. Generally, people are attached to sense enjoyment and so aspire for life on the heavenly planets. Therefore, they engage themselves in charitable or other pious activities. But actually, as stated in Bhagavad Gita, one cannot get relief from the chain of birth and death, even if he goes to the highest planet, Brahmaloka, because the influence of time is present everywhere within this material world. In the spiritual world, however, the time factor has no influence.
Yeah. Further, Devotee Mata says that, my dear son, please also describe the eternal time, which is Kalasya Ishvara Rupasya. So Kala, the time, is Ishvara Roop in the material world. Paresham cha parasyate Swarupam vada kurvanti yad heto kushalam jana. And for the clearing the effect of time, Kushala Janaha, people in general, they engage in pious activities. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada explains, however ignorant one may be, one is aware of the influence of time. And influence of time, as soon as the body is born, the clock starts ticking. And then slowly we can see the effect of time, right? We visit some relative after some 10 years, and suddenly the child who was in lower KG is now in 10th standard. Oh my God, you have just grown up so much, right? This is the influence of the time. So the influence of time is always there. We ask people, how old are you, right? 30 years old, 50 years old. So that is the influence of time. Realizing the influence of time, some pious people, they understand that at the end of this life, I have to meet the cruel hands of death. And then there will be next life. So next life, I have to avoid the the in the birth which is either the worst birth is like going to the animal species of the life, subhuman. And then even if I become human, I want to have a good family, good uh, you know uh, good surroundings, good facilities. So the karma, it is said that almost 2/3 of the karma comes from the previous life, 1/3 of the karma comes from this life. Some say 50-50, but it is very difficult to understand. Gahana karmanogati. And therefore people engage in pious activity because they will get good birth, they will go to the heavenly planets, they can enjoy the heavenly pleasures and everything else. But Prabhupada says this is also very, very time being. Why? Because even on the heavenly planets, there is influence of time. Brahma Bhuvanaloka, Punaravartino Arjuna. From the topmost Brahma Loka to the Patal Loka, everything there is influence of time. Tetvam Bhukta, Swargalokam Vishalam, Kshine Punye, Martilokam Vishanti. So instead of postponing problem to tomorrow, that is to better next birth, intelligent person will ask, why not eternal activities in the Vaikuntha, which is my natural position. Correct. And therefore, asking like this, he will be engaged in spiritual activity and looking for Vaikuntha, where there is no influence of time. The time is conspicuous in the spiritual world. Text 5. Lokasya mithyabhimate chakshusha Stiram prasutasya tasyatmanashreye Shrantasya karmasu anuvidyaya dhiya Tvamavirasi kila yoga bhaskaraha. Translation.
My dear Lord, you are just like the sun, for you illuminate the darkness of the conditional life of the living entities. Because their eyes of knowledge are not open, they are sleeping eternally in that darkness without your shelter, and therefore they are falsely engaged by the actions and reactions of their material activities. And they appear to be very fatigued. Purport. It appears that Srimati Devahūti, the glorious mother of Lord Kapila Deva, is very compassionate for the regrettable condition of people in general, who, not knowing the goal of life, are sleeping in the darkness of illusion. It is the general feeling of the Vaishnava, or a devotee of the Lord, that he should awaken them. Similarly, Devahūti is requesting her glorious son to illuminate the lives of the conditioned soul so that their most regrettable conditional life may be ended. The Lord is described herein as Yoga Bhaskara, the son of the system of all yoga. Devahūti has already requested her glorious son to describe bhakti-yoga, and the Lord has described bhakti-yoga as the ultimate yoga system. Bhakti-yoga is the sun-like illumination for delivering the conditioned souls, whose general condition is described here. They have no eyes to see their own interests. They do not know that the goal of life is not to increase the material necessities of existence. Because the body will not exist more than a few years. The living beings are eternal, and they have their eternal needs. If one engages only in caring for the necessities of the body, not caring for the eternal necessities of life, then he is a part of a civilization whose advancement puts the living entities in the darkest region of ignorance. Sleeping in that darkest region, one does not get any refreshment, but rather gradually becomes fatigued. He invents many processes to adjust this fatigued condition, but he fails and thus remains confused. The only path for mitigating this fatigue in the struggle for existence is the path of devotional service or the path of Kṛṣṇa consciousness. Hare Krishna.
Now Devotee says, my dear son, you are like the sun personified. Yoga Bhaskara. If you remember, the very, very beginning prayers of Devotee begin with the same, the similar words. Nirvinnam nitaram bhuman asadindriya tarshana. And there he says that remove this, andha tasyatvam tamasondhasya dushparasyaadyaparakam satchakshurjanmanamande. So here, this is called as chakshuhu surya ivoditah. This is 3.25.9, right? So there also she is called as the Lord as Surya. And now she's saying, my Lord. So Lord is called as Chandra when you are expecting Leela from the Lord. Shitalata, okay, the coolness, calming. So that is Chandra, Gaura Chandra. Lord is called as Surya when you are expecting knowledge, the light from the Supreme Lord. And here Devotee is expecting that light, and therefore she is always comparing the Lord to Surya. Yoga Bhaskara, Arka, Surya, like that. So she's saying, you're like the sun, you eliminate the darkness of conditioned life of the living entity. Their eyes of knowledge are not open, sleeping eternally to your shelter, and thus falsely engaged in the material activities and being exhausted of those material activities. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada says, Mother Devahūti is a glorious mother because she is very compassionate to the regrettable condition of people in general. And this is the general feeling of a Vaishnava, that he wants to awaken people to their real position. And that's why he will go book distribution. He will go for Janmashtami is coming, some fundraising drive. So that is the innate compassion within the devotee that, will push a devotee to extend for people. It is just like, just imagine the child is sleeping, and in the sleeping the child is dreaming, and in the dreaming the child is jor se crying, and the parents will be concerned that, it's crying, breathing heavily, gasping for the, maybe got some horrifying dream. Then the mother will very compassionately wake up the child. Sometimes the child is sleeping and the child is loudly laughing in the dream. So one day something like this was happening. I was saying, oh, nice, let the baby sleep. And my wife told me, no, too much laughing for the baby is also not very good. Too much, sometimes we do good to the child, and they will be laughing. Ah, ah, ah. And sometimes, father may do that also too much, but that is also not very good, because that puts too much of laughter, puts pressure on the heart, especially for the children. So sometimes the living entity may be excessively crying, excessively happy, but all these are just the dreaming conditions. And the Vaishnava takes the role of, like Devahūti here, the compassionate mother is. And therefore she is very glorious. The Lord is called as Yoga Bhaskara. He is the son of the system of all the yogas. He is the Yoga Bhaskara. So the mother is very, very compassionate Vaishnava, and the Lord is Yoga Bhaskara. And this is the discussion between them. Prabhupada says Bhakti Yoga is like the sun-like illumination. And people who have no knowledge, no eyes, Pashyan api na pashyati, they are sleeping to their greatest interest. And thus, the devotees at the Supreme Lord, they always do the conscious effort to wake them from this sleeping. And even if they are awake, considering the advancement, the whole concept of advancement is migrated towards material advancement. And in the course of material advancement, one is again getting entangled in the complexities of the material nature. And thus one is moving to the darkest path. And later, after so much of a material advancement, people are just fatigued. Sometimes you go for shopping and you go from one shop to another, some 10 shops you go. And then, have you experienced that? Although you went for shopping, but there is a shopping fatigue. You feel like, kab ek baar ghar aata hu karke. So this is the fatigue of the material existence. And that can be only mitigated by the process of devotional service. And this is how devotee is inquiring from her glorious son. So glorious mother, glorious son, and there is beautiful, glorious inquiry. We will conclude here and continue tomorrow. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Thank you,
Jai.
Prabhupada. Thank you,
Thank you,
everyone. Hare
Prabhupada.
Krishna.
Thank you.
Thank you, Prabhupada. Thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you, everyone. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Prabhuji, I have a question.
Yes.
Prabhuji, if in the analogy of a vending machine, a Jivatma has a free will to choose anything, correct?
Right.
But he will choose according to his previous birth or previous experience, isn't it? So how come he has a free will?
Very good question. So this is the same question is asked later by Parikshit Maharaj. That, so when, the fifth canto, when the Shukadeva Goswami is describing the hellish planets and the effect of the hellish planets, Parikshit Maharaj becomes very concerned that, and then Shukadeva Goswami, to test Parikshit actually, he says, no, there is process of Prayaschitta. And then Parikshit Maharaj says, what is the use of Prayaschitta, my dear sir? Prayaschitta will be there. But the tendency to commit the sin will always remain, and thus the Jivatma, the living entity, will be forcefully pushed on that path. Right? That shloka is Drishta Shrutabhyam Yat Papam Jananapi Atmano Ahitam Karoti Bhuya Vivashah. Very helplessly, because of the past conditioning, the living entity will be pushed toward a particular activity. Prayaschittam Katovatam. What is the use of Prayaschitta? When the living entity is forced by the previous samskaras, previous tendencies, the Prayaschitta will fall short. And then Shukadeva Goswami is very pleased with this inquiry. And Shukadeva Goswami says, and therefore, now, my dear Parikshit, I will tell you the process which will eradicate all previous samskaras and all the, not only sins, it will eradicate even the tendency to commit sin inclination towards sinful activity, papa karne ki pravritti, and that process is bhakti yoga, especially chanting the holy names. And to, give the example of this, there comes this glorious Ajamil Upakhyan. Ajamil was so sinful, and then so the process of bhakti yoga is extremely powerful. It can set one free when we follow that yama niyama, 4 regulative principles, chanting 16 rounds of Hare Krishna Mahamantra, and other, the other limbs of bhakti yoga. It actually karmani nirdahati kintucha bhakti bhajam. To the degree we are intense in our devotional service, to that degree one can actually dodge a huge amount of karma. I know so many Vaishnavas, who had gone to astrologers, and astrologers have told them that according to your karma, birth chart, and everything, this should have been your condition. But because you are a devotee, therefore you have dodged all those conditions in your life. Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he was a great Jyotisha. He had himself written Surya Siddhanta, great scholar on Surya Siddhanta. That's why his name is Bhakti Siddhanta. One reason is his Siddhanta. But later, studying devotional service and realizing the impact of devotional service on the living entity, he said, instead of becoming Jyotisha, let me become a devote, let me become preacher and spread this Bhakti Siddhanta so that Jyotisha also will not act on such a person, if the person is very intense in one's practice. So the answer is Bhakti Yoga. It looks very simple. It is deceivingly simple. Bhakti looks very simple, but is extremely powerful. It is like, please.
In short, a Jivatma has to come in contact with the sadhu and shastra. Then only he will progress in further.
Correct. Then only living entity can progress further. Otherwise, and that's why it is called as Bhagyavan Jeev, right? Brahmanda Brahmite Kon Bhagyavan Jeev. What is the next line? Guru Krishna Prasade Pai. By the prasad of Guru, one will get Krishna, and Krishna only will indicate one towards the right Guru. Then Bhagyavan Jeev. So the living entity has to be fortunate enough to come across the authentic message, to come across ISKCON or other authentic organizations. Right.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you, Prabhupada. Thank you, everyone. Hare Krishna.
Prabhuji, I have a question.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Prabhupada. Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhupada. Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Prabhupada, thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Jai. Jai.